Sup, buddy? It's been a while. I am trying to actually think when is the last time we saw each other in person?
My mind is
10
telling
years
me
ago?
it's been 72 years. My mind is telling me surely was it the anime awards from a year and change ago?
Was
Where
it
the beautiful pizza picture was taken?
was that the last time?
I think
When was
so.
the time when was the time I saw your place? Was that before then?
Oh God. It I mm,
It was
Jesus, when did I
either
move? Was that when I was in the little loft apartment?
yeah.
Yeah. So that would have been a hot second ago. Definitely over a year ago.
Okay, so that was the last time was Anime Awards then.
I guess so. It was either that or
Oh,
when you came
man.
in to maybe do something at Rooster Teeth. That is just that is
So
wild.
Anime Awards, that was not last year.
Not last year for sure.
And not the year before that, because you weren't there 2019, but 2018.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Jesus. We're
Did I
practically
kn-
strangers now. We're different people entirely.
Yeah, who are you again? No, it's really good to hear your voice. This podcast has been a good way to just be like, hey, let's just catch up and shit, why don't we just get started with how have things been? How have things been?
It's been interesting. I've been having to sort of try and figure out and navigate my day-to-day emotions because two big things happened in the year of our Lord 2020. Obviously, a global pandemic hit, and that changed the lives of everyone on the face of the planet. But then also in March of that year, I made the decision to leave my full-time position at Rooster Teeth after being at the company for about 10 years. And so there was this weird sort of from day to day, I'd be like, do I have anxiety because of the lockdown or do I have anxiety because I fundamentally changed the structure of my life for the first time in a decade? It's been wild though. It's I essentially wanted to, after being at the same place for 10 years, I obviously still treasure and love a ton of people working at Rooster Teeth and obviously want all their projects to continue to succeed. And I'm still working on Ruby stuff on a contract basis and yada, 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 yada. But I just kind of hit this point in my life where I was like, okay, I'm turning 30 this year and I just kind of want to do and try more things. I've been really, really fortunate in the fact that I've had the pleasure to work on so many cool animated series that a lot of people have enjoyed. But I've always kind of been interested in games writing. I think this relatively new medium that we call video games is just we're in the wild west of interactive storytelling right now. It kind of feels like back in early filmmaking when folks were just figuring out hey, you can cut from one location to another and the audience is smart enough to realize nothing crazy has happened and we can do these things with mirrors and we can make something it feels like that's where we're at with games right now. We've built these beautiful little empathy machines. There's just something about that I think is super cool. And so the big thing I wanted to do this past year, I've just kind of taken some time to unclench a bit and just kind of go back into a time of lots of self-care and some personal growth and education. So I've been taking some classes on games writing taught by a professor at the University of Texas here in Austin. And I've been reading a lot of books and then also just playing a lot of video games and been able to tell myself, this is research.
I mean, it is.
It is.
I know you didn't mean that entirely as a joke because it sounds silly, right? Playing video games for research. But if you are somebody who, writes or even acts or whatever, watching stuff, playing stuff, just seeing what. Here, let me turn off my fucking phone. Watching and playing stuff is legitimately very helpful.
It's been nice too. It led to some cool discoveries. Traditionally speaking, I'm not the biggest open world fan. I just find them. I don't know if it's my ADHD or what, but I get very overwhelmed and it starts to feel like a checklist. And so I just kind of, in general, obviously there's some greats out there like Breath of the Wild, but like for the most part, I've never fallen for that genre quite as hard as others. But that's obviously where a lot of game writers are really needed when you're creating these rich and sprawling worlds that need to have not just a bunch of characters, but a lot of history and lore. And so I made it a point to start playing more open world games and kind of noting what I did and didn't like about them. And in doing so, I a couple months late, I stumbled on Ghost of Tsushima, and holy shit, that game is so good. I really dug it. Really dug it.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I am approximately like 5 years behind video games, so I'm looking forward to playing it in like 2026. But I'm curious then, like, what have, besides Ghost of Tsushima, what have been some other like titles that really stuck out to you?
I started replaying the Fable franchise. I had I had an OG Xbox as a kid, and the first Fable game was an open world game I really adored. There's something I think kind of like whimsical about that franchise. Like it feels like there's something interesting that like you're pretty much a mute protagonist and you communicate through pantomime. So a lot of the stuff is very like Monty Python, absurd humor. There's chickens, there's a fart button. Like it's very kind of silly. But what I think is kind of fun about that franchise is like, and especially in the second one, you know, that's, I feel like prime Peter Molyneux being like, you can do literally anything in the world. It's going to be the biggest game ever. This is your second life. And it's like, okay, that's a bit hyperbolic. But the fact that like you can essentially become a real estate tycoon in the second game was like a small side game that I found very interesting and fun. I was like, oh, I can essentially start buying up like plots of land here in this city and like making bank when the market opens. And this is wild. Aren't I supposed to be saving the world? So that was a charming series to return to.
I've got a recommendation for you if you have not played it yet.
Oh, hit me, bud.
Yakuza 0, have you played it?
Okay. So, no. Yakuza franchise has been this like ships passing in the night. I always see, anytime a new Yakuza game comes out, I look at it and I'm like, maybe this is the time I'm going to jump over to that ship. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I know the latest one is now more of like a turn-based RPG. That's not Zero, is it? That's
no, that's Like a Dragon.
Like a Dragon, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is it about Zero? Because I know there's been a lot of games. Why is that the one you go to?
Let me give you the pitch.
Okay,
what you just described to me with Fable, or Fable 2, where you could be like a real estate tycoon, it instantly reminded me of something in Yakuza 0. But if you want to play, because I feel the same way you do about open world games, in that I tend to get, I find them a little tedious most of the time, unless they're really, really good. Yakuza 0, I mean, what do you know about it, first off, before I give you my salesman pitch here?
Okay, from what I've gleaned through just internet osmosis, I feel like I believe the Yakuza games follow the story of members of the of Yakuza, I don't know. And from what I understand, they have a pretty like melodramatic, like intense story, but then outside of that, it's like very goofy and like you can do karaoke and go dancing and like there's a million like I feel like that this is, from what I understand, a game filled with like very colorful characters and big performances. That's about it.
That is accurate. Let me give you the full pitch.
Okay.
So, and first off, you start with Yakuza 0. People always ask, what do I start with? There's like 7 games or 8 games. Start with Yakuza 0, which is a prequel. Basically, they remade the first 2 games. They're called Kiwami and Kiwami 2, and they're full like not next gen at this point, but current gen. Oh god, they're not even current gen because PS5. Okay, whatever. They're the first 2 were on PS2, and they made them for PS4, so they're really nice. And 0 is a prequel to those games and is the same engine. And 0 is the perfect place to start. I tell everybody, start with 0. And then everyone who has played 0 and then played the first one be like, yes, it's best to start with 0. But the structure of those games is essentially You're right. The main story is, first off, extremely well written, but it's extremely well written, very gritty, serious Yakuza story. And the side quests and sort of mini games you can play, those are famous for being very goofy, but it's really just there's a ton of shit you can do. And I think what makes this open world game really fun is that, unlike a lot of games where it's just this humongous area, but it's kind of empty, if you actually look at it, it's like, really, you could drive your car to, for like 2 minutes through nothing to get to this. Kamurocho, which is one of the main cities that the Yakuza games usually take place in, is not actually that big. In fact, you can run across the whole city, because it's just one city, in like a couple minutes, or like even less than, like, you can run from top to bottom of the screen and not that long at a time. But what they do then is, within this sort of square, they fill it with characters and things to do, so it feels like this very bustling, robust, city. And then you do unlock, like you can unlock other cities and, new areas within the city, but even then, you're always going around the same spots, so it becomes like this, almost like you become familiar with the neighborhood.
Yes.
Of like, oh yeah, that's where the general store is, and that's where the casino is, and that's where the bowling alley is, and it's all centralized within and then the side quests and stuff. It's a very like sweet game. I think what a lot of people don't understand or don't get out of it is, the main guy you play as, Kiryu, is like one of the nicest, purest people on the planet. and he's not actually, they're called Yakuza, but they're not he's not actually technically Yakuza in a lot of them. It's usually each game they're like, Kiryu, you're out of the Yakuza, and he's like, okay, that's fine. And then it's him just still getting tangled up in Yakuza messes. But like, I think a lot of people, like a friend of mine, for example, had the impression, I don't know, it's like Grand Theft Auto, where you're just like a bad guy, and it's like, no. Oh, no. You are the purest good man of all. Like, Kiryu is the most noble hero, helping everybody in need, regardless of how stupid their problem is. Like, your cat's like lost, Kiryu will help you find it. Oh, you're getting like targeted by mobster assassins, Kiryu will help you, fight them. He won't kill them because he's a good guy. But he'll
real
fight
Tanjiro
them.
energy.
Yeah. So, it's this perfect blend of, like, some of the best writing I've seen, like legit. Like, Anne-Marie watched me play Yakuza 0 and was engrossed in the story, like, after, just accidentally, just by watching cutscenes. Because it's that well written. And
that's
then
awesome.
Outside of that, there's a full-fledged real estate game. There's a there's a hostess club. You run a hostess club, and you befriend the girls and, like, teach them life lessons, and, like, there's actual Sega games in the arcades. There's like, all sorts of, sports and gambling, and there's pocket car racing. It's just chock full of so much fun stuff to do. And if you're a completionist like me, the game is constantly rewarding you for everything. There and the reward points you get for doing things, you can then unlock, like, upgrades and features in the game. You get completion points for running. Like, how far have you run? You get completion points for trying every food in the city, every drink in the city. Like, all this stuff. It's just ingenious. So
that is awesome.
I implore you, pick up Yakuza 0. I think, it's always getting on sale for like $5, $10, and it's
hell yeah. I got Game Pass, and now I think it's just part of Game Pass. Like, Game Pass is insanely good deal. Like, I've been, like, the console war, whatever, sure. Like, I was Xbox for a long time, then I switched over with the PS4 generation. And I have to say, I'm super excited about the quote unquote next gen, current gen, whatever you call it. Whatever we're in right now is fascinating to me because Sony and Microsoft seem to be going with like two different strategies. Sony doubling down on their like awesome auteur, like artsy fartsy single player stories that I love that shit. I'm here for that shit. And then Microsoft is like, okay, we're going to do like good GameFly now. We're going to make Netflix for video games and we're going to give a whole bunch of devs like, I feel like they are creating the AA game. Like right now, I feel like games and movies are in a similar space where you're either an indie darling or a AAA blockbuster Avengers Infinity War thing. And you just don't really see a lot of middle of the road stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But like Microsoft is just like bringing in all these people, and it's not just like a quantity versus quality thing. I feel like they're kind of trying to go for both. And so far it's been like, I got in because it was like, hey, 3 months for $1 and we have Halo on PC now. And I was like, haha, you got me. And I've stuck with it. I'm playing The Medium right now, which is a game I probably wouldn't have picked up without Game Pass. Yeah, it's interesting. Medium is you play as a medium. It's set in oh god, now I'm blanking. It doesn't matter where it's set. You're a woman who can see into the spirit realm, and you get a mysterious phone call that lures you out to an abandoned like resort in the middle of the wilderness. And it's established like something all your life you've dealt with the fact that you can see ghosts and you have learned to help them move on. Sometimes spirits hang around and they're confused or unwilling to move on, and you help them out. You get them to go.
Okay.
You're brought to a place where clearly there's something special, something sinister about this place. It is a horror thriller kind of detective genre. I would describe it, oddly enough, as Persona meets Resident Evil, and let me explain what that means.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So Resident Evil is probably the best gameplay comparison, and by that I mean like original Resident Evil, where you have fixed camera, moderately fixed camera, kind of take control character. And I'm thinking, think about the puzzles in Resident Evil, like where you're getting 3 dog heads or this or that. Very kind of like obtuse and spatial awareness based puzzles to help you progress through the environment or open a door or whatever. Yeah. So almost like a low pressure Resident Evil. There's not combat in this game in the traditional sense. There will be moments where it's like, oh, there's a dangerous thing in this room, or I can't fall down there. But these moments are very obvious. Like something I was talking about with some of my classmates today was that I'm not as scared as I was when I first started playing this game, because it is now very obvious to me when I am in a moment of danger and when I'm totally fine. Okay. But where the Persona stuff comes in is, and what I think the game currently, I'm not done with it yet, but what I think is most interesting about this game is it is a game about trauma. It's a story about how trauma leads to more trauma, and you will encounter strong spirits throughout the course of the game, and the way in which you quote unquote defeat or overcome them is by exploring who they are on the inside and teleporting into this like world of shame that they have built around, and finding like, why are you this malevolent, violent thing? What is it that happened to you in your past that made this? And I feel like a point the game is trying to make is we should all strive to understand people that do harm. That does not mean that we have to forgive them, but it is worth understanding to know where it comes from and how it could lead to more. And it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. Overall, I'm enjoying it. Again, I got it with Game Pass, so it's not like I dropped $50 on it. But it's a game where something that we talk about a lot, and that's something I've always been fascinated with, is when do you make something a game? I think the medium in which you tell a story, whether it be a novel, a film, a television series, or a game, I think there should be a purpose behind the medium that you choose. Sure. And there are times where it feels as though the gameplay is getting in the way of a very compelling story, where sometimes Marianne, the protagonist, is a little clunky to move around, or I already know the solution to a puzzle, and I'm just having to like go to point A to point B to enact this thing that I already know is going to work. However, there are other times when you are encountering these personifications of trauma where I would admit that this feeling of empathy is made stronger by the fact that I am the one controlling Marianne, and I am the one making this discovery as opposed to watching a show where I'm just being told what happened.
Right.
And so it's interesting. It's I feel like nowadays everything has to be either good or bad. And so far in my experience, the medium is, everything's more complex than that. And there are things about this game that I absolutely adore. I think the story is really intriguing. The visual design behind this game is phenomenal. Like, you've got some Guillermo del Toro level creature design in this thing, which I really think is cool. And every environment is dripping with personality in the same way that like Persona dungeons clearly have a theme or an aesthetic going. There's a lot of that in this game. And on a technical level, they're doing some cool stuff too. You can tell they're trying to like show off the new Xbox chops, because there'll be sections in the game where Marianne's consciousness will be split, and there's literally a split screen that appears on your monitor where you're controlling Marianne in the physical plane as well as the spiritual plane. They look completely different, and in some planes there might be an obstacle like a wall, but in the spiritual plane there's nothing. And so then there's this interesting mechanic where you have an out-of-body experience, which means for a limited amount of time, not forever, but for a limited amount of time, your physical body will stay put while your spirit can venture onward someplace where you can't go physically, and then can then like unlock a power or do something that then allows you to go back to the physical world and then bypass the obstacle. And it's like it's playing with a lot of really cool mechanics. It feels a bit like a first draft, but it's a first draft that I'm really enjoying.
No, I mean, that sounds really cool, actually. This is for Xbox only, you said? For the
Xbox and PC, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think you brought up an interesting point of when should something be a game? And I guess my question to you, well, I think clearly the answer is yes, just from what you're describing it, is like, does it do something where only a game could convey what it wanted to convey? And
that's a difficult question, right? Because there are some games out there that I feel like could only be a game. Big ones that come to mind: Undertale, Doki Doki Literature Club, the Stanley Parable. Right? These are Stanley Parable is a game about a game, right? But these things have a discussion with the player and a discussion about interactivity and choice and predetermination and whatnot. Then there are things that I think are made stronger through games. Like I think what's a recent example? One, it's not a great example, but spoiler alert, not really. This is not a spoiler. In The Last of Us 2, there is a moment where you have to do something that is very uncomfortable, and the game won't show it to you in a cutscene. It makes you press a button. God of War has done this too, and I think sometimes that can be used to great effect. I also think sometimes that's like a mechanic that is kind of played out and is a bit like, okay, you're gonna make me do it. Okay, I got it. The discussion around The Last of Us 2 is very interesting. I enjoyed that game, but I also think, like every piece of art, there's things that it succeeds at and things that it doesn't. And all in all, the discourse around that, when you can blot out just the bigotry and hatefulness, is a really interesting one. Gosh, I think obviously stories that involve choice, like a lot of RPGs and open world games and visual novels, whatnot, like obviously those are kinds of things that can really only be told in games, or choose your own adventure books, which I loved. I had the Goosebumps one as a kid and I always thought that was fun. But I think there are things that can make you feel more powerful, that can make you feel more sympathetic. Something that's been interesting right now that I've kind of been studying is this concept called the story stack, which was something brought up by a designer, Jason, oh my God, what's his last name? Vandenberg. It's a bizarre last name. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but he was talking about how when it comes to writing a story for your game, where do you start? And what are things that are subject to change, and what are things that really need to be locked in? And what he has suggested is that there's kind of 5 parts to your narrative for your game. There is the story, the world, the economy, the action, and the fantasy. And from top to bottom in that order, starting with story, those are the parts of your story that should be the most flexible throughout the development of your game, that can change on a whim. And the fantasy is the thing that should be pretty rock solid and not changing. And what I mean by that is, or I suppose what he means by that, when we say fantasy, we're starting with what is the player experience? And to me, that's similar to saying, like, what is the theme of the story you're telling? Like, if you're writing a movie or a book or something, like, what is this story about? What is going to be the DNA that you weave into every scene and every character? What is this? What are we talking about here? Not necessarily the premise of the plot, but like the soul of the body of work. And so, for example, let's take Breath of the Wild. That's a game that I think most people have played. So I would argue that the fantasy of Breath of the Wild is to embark on a grand adventure across a sprawling and fantastical world to save a princess. Like that's what we want to feel, right? Like ignoring who Link is and the legacy of this franchise. Like when you play Breath of the Wild, you should feel like you're going on this cool Tolkien-esque fantasy, I'm a knight gonna save the princess adventure. So everything else needs to be in support of this. So above fantasy, you have your action, and these are like literally the verbs. So what can you do in Breath of the Wild? You can fight. You got like, you can slash, you can jump, you can climb, you can walk, you can swim, you can glide, you can fight with a million different objects. You solve puzzles. You adjacent to solving puzzles, what I would say would be problem solving, in the sense that Breath of the Wild is something that I loved, which was you're not necessarily presented with like, here's a locked door, move the idols and symbols to unlock it. It's like, hey, here's a gorge. How do you want to get across this? You can knock down a tree. You could go down and climb up, like more like critical thinking stuff.
Sure.
So all of these, like, yeah, these sounds like things a hero would do in their journey to save Princess. Cool. The midpoint is then economy, which is kind of a weird word, but in regards to kind of what you were talking about with Yakuza, this is ways in which the player is being told that they are progressing, right? Like, because video games are interactive and can be taken at different paces and whatnot, especially in open world games, you need to ensure the player that they're not just reading the same paragraph over and over again. And so like a really basic one that I think people don't think about often, though, is whenever you get a cutscene in a game, like a cutscene's a reward. You're getting a narrative treat for doing the thing that you're supposed to do in the game.
Right.
And so going with our Breath of the Wild example, like unlocking a memory for Link, obviously acquiring new weapons and items, the Sheikah Slate skills, unlocking portions of your map with towers, even things like meeting a new NPC or finding a village that has like helpful things there. Like all of these are ways of rewarding the player and giving them more stuff and saying like, you're doing great. Keep it up, hun. We love this.
Sure.
After that then is the world. So obviously with Zelda, we're going to set it in Hyrule. Majora's Mask does some other stuff. But for this version of Hyrule, this iteration of Hyrule, if we're going with this fantasy of exploring a sprawling landscape and surviving and whatnot, they go with this post-apocalyptic Hyrule. It's ruins. It's primarily the wilderness, and you have great volcanoes and huge, mountains that scrape the sky itself, and rivers in the Zora's Domain. So at that point, that's when you're getting into the lore. Okay, why is this world the way it is? We need to write in the 100-Year War that happened and how Link was defeated. We need to come up with the guardian beasts, the divine beasts, and these 4 clans. And so now we're getting into the stuff that's like, we can get a little flexible. We could change what iteration of Hyrule this is, but this is what we're kind of going with right now. And then finally, then the story of like, okay, yeah, Calamity Ganon, 4 divine beasts, Link lost. Like, it's just like, I had never looked at a game like that before. I'd always thought of like, what's the player experience? But I never really thought past that when it gets down to like, okay, like we're part of the narrative team working our 9 to 5. We have a request from design, like game mechanics, we're adding or losing a new mechanic. Okay, how much work do we have to redo or scrap or repurpose? And viewing it through these 5 lenses is, I think, a really, really helpful tool. And man, like I said at the top of this thing, I just geek out on this like player psychology and this new way of telling stories. And so I hope I didn't bore anybody to death with this mini TED talk, but like I eat this shit up. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, listen, I think what makes Breath of the Wild stand out, and I look back on it, and this is somebody who I'm not like actually the biggest Zelda fan, which
same,
is sacrilege, but like I
feel that.
Yeah, I really like. I'm going to compare it to one Zelda game that I do enjoy, and that one that actually stuck with me more is Wind Waker. I don't know if you've played Wind Waker.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
Wind Waker has a similar feel to Breath of the Wild in that a lot of it is kind of like you're just going around doing whatever you want, and then like there's a lot of freedom, which Breath of the Wild also offers, and Breath of the Wild is completely open world. But I think what's remarkable, and you touch on a lot of this with your mini TED talk, but no, it really rings true with. I look back on that game and how you can progress through that game in not completely any order, but almost any order you want. Like a lot of people do the different divine beasts in different orders. They discover things, and but the way that game is woven together with, like you said, the atmosphere, the what you discover, especially the memories. The memories are so crucial to that game to make you go, like, even though I'm, sometimes I'm just having fun, snowboarding down a hill or cooking or whatever. Whenever you discover one of those, at least for me, and I think for most players, there's such emotional, like, what do you call it? You connection to what you're watching, and it brings you back in to, like, I think a lot of other open world games, which I kind of touched on before with why I don't like them so much, is I'm just kind of running around doing things, and then story thing happens, and then I just keep on doing stuff until you unlock the next thing. Whereas Breath of the Wild, you're constantly, even when you're not watching cutscenes, you are feeling the repercussions of the past. Just in watching what happened to the world around you and what people are saying. It's there's a reason why it's so fucking good, and it's because of everything you were just talking about. It's beautifully done.
I have this also like meta theory about this game, something that this game can kind of bet on, not completely, but it definitely gets a bonus in, I would argue, the majority of players today, that it gets solely from being a Legend of Zelda game. And that is that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a game about reclaiming your home that you lost. Like, you lost it. And you wake up, and it's kind of it can be kind of a tired trope, but in this case, I think it works great. Link wakes up at the start of the game with amnesia. Oh my gosh, what a crazy narrative device. But what's so interesting about this is that, like I said earlier, there's been a lot of iterations of the Kingdom of Hyrule. And given the Legend of Zelda's like crazy timeline and reincarnation and all that stuff, like it's an interesting evolving world that we get to view over years and years and years.
Right.
And that's what I think makes this so interesting, is that the majority of players, not all, but a good majority of players, are familiar enough with The Legend of Zelda to understand its recurring themes, its items, its characters, locations, weapons. And so you're given a version of Link who doesn't remember everything or doesn't remember what happened, but kind of knows where he is. And that's exactly where the player is at. We know who we are. We know we're supposed to defeat evil. And we're told that we failed and that Hyrule fell. And we kind of know some things in Hyrule, but like, as an example, like when I first realized, one of the first locations you discover there is the Temple of Time in Breath of the Wild. And at first I just viewed it as a cathedral. And then I started walking around, and then some time passes and it clicked with me. I'm like, oh my God, this is the Temple of Time. And I had this immediate moment of elation that I found someplace that I recognized and knew. And that was followed by sorrow in discovering that it is left in ruin and has been destroyed. And if that isn't exactly what Link is thinking in that moment, like, that is some great player avatar synergy right there.
Yeah.
And like, you are just like how Link is motivated as a character to seek out these areas and reclaim his memories. I feel like that is absolutely step in step with players who want to see what happened to Hyrule, which in a way is also a home to them. It's a place that we explored as children on the N64, or even before that on the NES and Super NES. And to want to see what happened to this place that we used to live in at one point in our lives or another, I think is just as much of a motivator as any other game mechanic that is coded into that game. And I think that's just like, it's fucking cool.
It's fucking cool, yeah. And like the game, the very early game spoiler, but when you find out that old man is, the king, it's like, wow, shit. A lot of shit happened, huh? A lot of shit went down. But it does fill you with like, oh man, like, okay. Yeah, it's great, like uncovering and, God, just looking back on it, I keep going back to the memory system, but, piecing together that sort of Pulp Fiction ass, like, just discover like, oh wait, this happened because of this, and oh wait, this, oh God, like, that whole game is about. I'm very curious how Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be.
Ooh.
Because
right now, let's get this out. What would you like to see in a sequel?
Oh boy, it's tough because the whole joy of Breath of the Wild is discovery for me, right? Discovery. And that means for me, ideally, Breath of the Wild 2 can't really be like the same map, just new things. So my guess or my hope or both is, are we getting like, they love doing like World of Shadow, like Land of Shadow, Land of Light. Are we getting like
that's what I'm hoping.
I'm hoping we get brand new map, completely different, maybe dimension or something, where we get that same feeling, and please let us play as Zelda. Just
please, Daddy Nintendo, let us play as Zelda.
Yeah, please. At least like as an option or something. But like I am hoping that's the direction they're gonna take, because not that I don't think they could do a good job otherwise. And I also understand it'd be much easier to make a sequel for the same system if you get to build upon what you already have.
Right.
So it's not like it's impossible for them to make a version of the game that still uses the same map, if they like changed enough about it where it felt pretty different. But if you want to capture... I don't think anyone, or not anyone. I don't know. A lot of people finished Breath of the Wild and went, can't wait for the second one. Like, I don't know. It felt like a pretty complete experience. Maybe something that could have like a DLC or epilogue chapter, maybe. But I don't know. I think it ends very well. So then it's this interesting thing. Like, you don't want to be like, this was fun, but didn't really feel like it needed to be made. I think that's like one of the, not worst reactions you can get, but something else. It's underwhelming. We're like, I think success absolutely comes with a lot of hardship when you are expected, even if you're not doing a direct sequel, but everybody wants to see what your next follow-up is. The expectation that you have to hit. I mean, like, hype is one of the most dangerous things on the internet today. Good Lord. Yeah. And I don't envy a soul at Nintendo working on the sequel to Breath of the Wild, but I think we could all be sure that they're going to do something that they are passionate about and something that they think will be important. I feel like Nintendo has its weird quirks. Yeah. God, get your online shit together, please. But I don't think anyone can argue. And I think this is the case in most situations. Like, most people aren't half-assing art. Most people are doing it because they care about it on a certain level. And I think that in general, I think Nintendo has a great track record. Oh yeah, you can't accuse Nintendo of half-assing.
Yeah, sure. Jesus Christ.
They go hard. Now, I like to give the guests an opportunity to, if they would like to bring up a topic or have a question for me or anything you want, I'd like to give you the chance to do so. If you don't have anything off the top of your head, don't worry about it. But if there's anything.
Well, I feel like I've already I've steered us just like full throttle into games discourse. I wonder if you could dive into a completely different profession, what do you think you'd want to do? Like, you get to re-roll your stats and just do like a completely different field. What would you want to jump into, my man?
That is a terrifying question because for me, so much of, I think, I don't want to say my entire, but like a lot of my driving force was acting, right? Wanting to act,
Yeah.
and a passion for that, and it's like now that I'm in it, I'm like, I can't, this is what I. It's not like this is what I was meant to do, but it's like this. I worked very hard for many, many, many years to even get to this point, and it's like I did it. And some people might feel like, I talk to some voice actors, and they're like, "Oh, but I feel like I don't know, I want to do more," and I'm like, You want to do more? I don't know. I'm living my dream. Like every time I work, I'm reminded of like, yo, this is the shit. This is like exactly what I've been wanting. And I don't know. I mean, I guess if that spark goes away, then maybe I'd want to look at other things. But I don't know. It's something that I just enjoy so deeply. So to be asked, a lot of people ask, what do you think you'd be doing if you didn't have that? So I do think, is this like a thing where I can kind of just choose like a different
Yeah,
thing?
I think like imagine that let's say that right now you're reading the book of Sungwon, and for just a hot second you get to pick up the alternate book of Sungwon and read some chapters in that, and it's like a completely different choose your own adventure, and then you can go back to a normal book of Sungwon.
I guess my question is this like realistically or
no,
not?
absolutely not.
Okay,
absolutely not. Full fantasy.
Got it. Okay.
Christ, I wouldn't be able to do anything with my history, my fucking like resume. I'm stuck. I'm trapped in entertainment for the rest of my life.
Okay. The thing is, it would still be an entertainment, but instead of the acting side, I think it would be. Oh God. I think it'd be writing. I think it would be. It's something that I was always very into as like when I was much younger, and then I don't know, it's something that even in recent years has kind of been crawling back and in surprising ways, and so I kind of that was sort of like not a side of myself, but something I was like, I'm not a writer. Like I'm an actor and a performer, and
Ridiculous.
I mean with the YouTube channel, I write, or it's been a while, but I wrote skits, like, so that's still writing, and but
it's 100% writing.
No,
it's 100%.
I know
I consider you a writer, but please continue.
Oh, no, people tell me this. They're like, "What do you mean you're not a writer? Like you are, you do." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not getting necessarily like, I was like, I never considered myself as, I'm going to put myself forward as, you should hire me to write for you. I'm comfortable writing for myself because I know what I like, and but it was never sort of a thing of, I'm going to put myself out there as a writer for hire. And I think if it wasn't acting, then it would be writing for sure, because I do enjoy it, and it's something that in recent years I'm like, I guess I did really like doing this, and it never really went away. I guess that's something I realized. It never actually went away. It was just something that I was like, that's for fun, and that's only for fun. So I don't know. Like, I still think I don't have enough, I don't have enough energy in my life where I can fully dedicated to, for me, it's going to be, as long as I'm being allowed to act, that's going to be my main passion and honestly what I enjoy the most. But if I happen to get like more writing stuff, like I guess for me, it's like being pushed in the deep end, but I've, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm pretty good at like doggy paddling my way out of stuff. Like
damn straight.
So it's been like, just get over that imposter syndrome and just keep paddling, and that's eventually how acting worked out. So I think I can do my best to keep afloat.
Yeah.
But yeah, if for you, who who is a writer, I guess because you write, you act, you're in the entertainment industry. What's your answer to that question?
I'd love to be a Nat Geo photographer. I'd love to go take pictures of animals.
I love that. That'd
be amazing.
I was not expecting that at all.
I for a while I thought about doing that. I was a teenager. I was getting scuba certified because I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do some of this. And then I don't know, maybe because I was a teenager, I just immediately dropped that because I was like, my attention span was so small. But
I have another answer for you. But please continue.
Yeah?
Please continue. Yeah.
Oh well, no. So it's funny because I was about to say, well, my answer's boring. I'd like to go travel and photograph animals in exotic places. Well, no, let me rephrase that. I grew bored of my answer when you, I'm sorry, I grew bored of my question when you gave me your answer, because then I immediately want to be like, well, hold on. Why do you like acting so much? Why are you interested in writing? What is it about these things that you do?
We can talk about that, sure. But this whole, I did not know you had like actual interest in like photography and like animal, like that's awesome.
I mean, it's like Pokemon Snap, but for real, right? Like, let's just go ahead and just put it under that frame.
Sure.
There's just something I think you can find beauty in anything if you learn enough about it. I also think once you learn too much about something, like what was once fascinating can become mediocre and you get jaded with it. Yeah. But like, I really don't give a shit about sports, but I had a close friend of mine really desperately try to get me into basketball by explaining some like team dynamics and like player history. Mm-hmm. And like, he told me this whole story about members playing for the Spurs. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like, yeah, if I were to follow this player's whole dynasty and like knew their career, like at that point I'm watching a shonen anime and this kicks ass, this rules. Yeah. I just don't have the time or the energy or really the desire to learn the stories of every member of the NBA. And so I don't think I'm ever going to follow this, but yeah. I can see how, as you become more educated on the matter, you can find the things that you can see why other people get really into it.
Sure.
I think that's why I'm, the more I've learned about games and how that gets made, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And I've explained to friends of mine who aren't big gamers, like how impactful a game moment can be as soon as you give the player a loaded gun, like all the things that is telling the player subconsciously, like, and I'll go off on that and they're like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. And I say nobody does. It's so cool. A lot of people do, and they make great games. But no, I think like learning more about like species of animals and like their whole ecosystem and their own social hierarchies and all that stuff, like it's gotta be amazing. I also have to imagine nowadays it has to be a difficult job knowing that the planet's on fire.
Oh God, yeah.
Like at that point, I swear every nature show and documentary, poor David Attenborough has just been screaming like, hey guys, but for real, everything is going to die if we don't get our shit together.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think there is something about that profession to me of like going and capturing footage or images of wildlife that people cannot normally see. It's, to me, better than putting animals in a zoo. It's going to their home and coming back with what you found and giving a book report so people can care more and be made more aware of this stuff and how maybe their actions affect this other species ecosystem. There's something about it to me that, as someone looking from the outside, just a passing glance, something about that profession feels very wholesome and like it is not necessarily doing anything harmful. It is raising awareness, and it also seems like would just be a absolutely thrilling adventure that I'm sure is filled with lots of boring sitting and waiting for a fucking lizard to crawl by. And I'm just thinking about the most romantic aspects of this job, but that's every job, right? Like being a voice actor is great, and then you have to like edit all your takes and then add certain like compression and yeah exactly. Right. There is no I'm happy all the time job out there. That's a capitalist lie. But yeah, no, I think that's why that profession is it's very enticing to me. That seems like an alternate universe Miles that could be a lot of fun.
Okay, let me give you better answers to your. Well, then we'll go to the next question you had. But like,
sure,
I still think when I said writing, that's still something that I could I think realistically that could happen. Like I could
100%. Like I've said, you're already a writer. You say you've only written shorts and stuff, but brevity is the soul of wit, my man. Yes.
Let me give you a better answer. Okay, in the vein of like. Okay, I'm gonna give you two answers. One, I think we'll see, and one, I'm like, this is not happening in my lifetime. It's already a little too late for that. One,
okay.
I'm actually like, never say never, but I'm like, this could maybe like board game design. Like I could never be a full-time board game designer at this point, but just even like designing one or like helping design or during COVID I've been doing these like trivia nights and I'm also developing right now like a just for fun with friends a tabletop thing. It's actually a Pokemon tabletop thing, but what I've been noticing is I already love board games, and obviously everybody who's listening to this podcast knows I love board games because I won't stop fucking talking about them. But I've played. Let me see exactly. You want to guess how many board games I've played? Because I know the exact number.
I would love that. I'd love that. Okay.
How many different
lifetime number?
Yeah. I'm looking at the number right now. How many do you think I've played?
112.
That's cute. I own more than that personally.
Oh my god!
I have played as of the recording of this 709 games. So I think a very good grasp of what makes a good board game, what is not. And what's interesting is with these trivia nights I've been doing, they have item systems. They have round like each round. I don't know. It's like a whole thing. Like I did do one of them live, like a Mario one live on Twitch, which I think was a lot of fun. And that's like a very like minor version of how crazy I can get with this. But what I've sort of been discovering is there's a lot of joy for me in coming up with how can I translate what I want to convey into, like, let's say, a simpler or board game kind of system, and then sort of running through it and going, okay, this is fun, this isn't fun, and just perfecting it. It's something that I legitimately am getting a lot of enjoyment out of, and I think what I always tell people is if you can have pursuing your dreams creatively as your job is great and all. But if you can have stuff that you just love fucking doing for fun, that's so valuable. And right now for me, that's been these trivia things and then this tabletop thing. I am putting so much time and effort into these, but it's so enriching. And then I always tell people, doesn't matter if you're getting paid. Like, first off, are you enjoying it? That's the most important thing. Secondly, that is creative progression. As a person, right? It does not matter if you were paid or not to do it, or that even if it's your main job, like you are progressing creatively as a person. So that's my, maybe in like we'll see one day. And then my answer that like this isn't happening, but just like dream.
Wait. Yeah. Oh wait, get it out. But I have you've just sparked off so many things I want to talk about with what you just said. But if you throw out the other one, the other one. Okay.
Other dream job. Just like getting paid to taste food, or like a culinary like a expert, like whether it's like
That's so good.
like God, I loved him, Bourdain, or like Anthony Bourdain, or even just like a restaurant critic, or just something like that, just being paid to eat food. But anyway, what was your question?
Hell yes.
What was your question?
Okay, so many things. First off, dude, like I think you designing your own game is so within the realm of possibility. Like I feel like given your obviously like history playing games and you just like you can talk about them, you can identify what's fun, what isn't, like that is extremely possible for you, my man. One of the things that I've done in this class that I'm taking too is one of our first exercises was take the most boring board game, which is like you have 32 squares around the edge of a board, and you roll dice, and it was like, without drastically changing the mechanics, write something that makes this interesting. Write the flavor text on each square and what happens when you land on it. Contextualize what is a fairly boring and played out gameplay system. And that was our first exercise. And then our second one was take a story that already exists, whether it be a book series or television or movie, whatever, and then work backwards and create game mechanics that serve that narrative. And I made a card game based on Bridgerton from Netflix. Oh, shit. And I was very proud of it. I made it was like, and I tried to make something that like you could play without any knowledge of the show. Like you could just call this game Debutante and it would function identically. But it was kind of a old maid mixed with a hidden role type game where everybody is fighting just not to be the last debutante without a man proposing engagement. And there would be things where you could spread rumors, and you would do so secretly by like placing a card that represented one player and then choosing a card from your hand that had either a positive or negative effect rumor. And then you would slip that into an envelope and put the envelopes in the middle of the table. They get shuffled up. And then there's a thing, if you've watched Bridgerton, like every now and then there's someone named Lady Whistledown who posts the society papers. That's just like gossip tabloids. But everyone reads it in the town. And so like if someone's dirty laundry gets aired out in the society papers, like that can totally change this like courtship game. Like it really is kind of this bizarre game that all the characters are playing throughout the series. And like it's just like musical chairs but with husbands. It's not that. It's better than that. But no, it was like it goes back to that story stack of like, what's the fantasy? What is the experience we're going for? And then how do we build systems around that support that and enrich that? And what I'm saying is, let's team up and make a board.
I mean, listen. For me, it's more like I don't have, but if presented with the opportunity, oh man, like I would definitely be interested, because
dude, I could 100% see you creating and working and designing your own games in not a large amount of time. Sorry.
Oh God, I just I mean, it's something. It would be fun, but it's like, spreading yourself thin, right? Oh man, but
sure.
No, listen, for me, I think it's like, I guess that is another one that's like, maybe. Like, it's like COVID it's something I never thought about before COVID. And then after, it's like, maybe. After, it's something that people have said to me, like, before, like, oh, so when are you going to, before I was like, oh, I'm not qualified for that. Like, I have no idea how I would do that. And now I'm like, no, I have ideas of how I could, like, do that.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm putting this much work into something that only like 4 friends are gonna see, or 8 friends are gonna see, then it's that's oh God.
I think you were speaking earlier about how if you are having fun doing it and like you are growing creatively, One of the things that went into my decision to leave Rooster Teeth was I read this book called The Artist's Way. It was like written in the early 90s, and there's some aspects about it that are a bit dated. But if I had to boil down the thesis of this workbook, which I do really like, it is essentially, hey, if there is something that just thrills you, that you just love, that is calling to you, do not be afraid to chase that.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously I was in a very, very fortunate position to where I felt comfortable taking a risk and going to pursue something different than what I had done. And I understand not everybody is in that position, or maybe you're doing so much that you would feel yourself spread too thin. But like something that I've wondered, like I have no idea if I'm actually going to end up working in the games industry. Like I might get lucky and get like a small job and realize, oh, I like the sausage, but I don't like seeing how it's made. I want to go back to linear narrative. Like even though I'm doing all the stuff now, I just the other day had an idea and am now working on a pitch deck for an animated show. But I'm trying to view all of this as like, it doesn't have to lead to something.
Yes.
There does not need to be our whole myself as a person, and I think on some level Western society is very achievement and goal oriented. And I think it is a nice thing to remind yourself that just the act of taking some time to learn about something or read something or just experiment with something. Maybe you make a card game, just like you said, for a handful of your friends. Like I wrote a D&D campaign for some of my friends, and it wasn't streamed to a bunch of people. I just did it for that. And it was still very rewarding, and I got a lot out of it and I learned from it, and it was also a lot of fun. And like I said, it's a difficult time to be like telling somebody like chase your dreams. Like it's a very scary time right now. Holy shit. I guess more what I'm just trying to say is like for a long time, I was like, I'm not a writer. That's just kind of something I do for fun. I'll probably get a job doing something else. Like I knew I wanted to work in animation, but I was like, I don't think I'd ever be a writer. And then one day I was. I got very lucky and had the right skills at the right place at the right time. And suddenly this thing that I had forever written off as this will just be for fun, became what I do for a living. And did that change my relationship with writing? Absolutely. Is it a change that I am okay with? Yes. And there are high highs and low lows, but that's literally everything in life. And so I think just, if you are able to, even on the side or for just a little bit of time a day, like, chase that thing that makes you happy. Fucking put on a goddamn trivia night with items and fucking like go for it. And I think it can really do a lot just for your happiness.
Oh yeah, I think you bring up a couple good points. One, I mean, just right what you just said. Doing stuff just because it makes you happy. Like there's so much pressure, like you said, I gotta achieve my goal in my career. Career. Yes, career's great and all, but it's not everything. And God, if you try to push all your happiness on career, you're gonna be fucking miserable when there are the inevitable lows or the inevitable, slow times, right? But what? Oh God, you also said, like some people, like they think this is my dream. I gotta work towards this. They get it, or they start getting into it and going, this isn't what I actually wanted at all. Like, or I actually don't love this as much as I thought I did. And I think there's a legitimate bravery and also like a lot of wisdom in like going, even though I worked towards this, there is no like shame or anything. I'm going, actually this isn't what I want. Like, if anything, it's better than just going, no, I have to keep going and just going, grinding, and then just you're miserable no matter, even if you do like achieve what you thought you wanted.
Succumbing to that sunk cost fallacy is how cults get started. Okay.
and that's how gambling debt happens, so
exactly.
It's a thing. And I always, we kind of touched on this already, but the experience you got from that is not wasted by any. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean like you can stuff that you learn and stuff that you do and whatever experience you get can be translated into so many things outside of career. It can enrich you socially. It can enrich you, even just like, hey, I got to do that or I did that and that was cool. Like that in itself is, a positive net change in your life. So I think like you've been saying, like the sort of capitalistic, like, but you gotta make money off of it. It's like no. Like there's so much more outside of that is also important. Now you said you had another question about was acting or writing?
Oh, it was just it was almost just like a side question when I asked, what would you want to do instead? And you were saying, oh, well, I love acting so much. I get so much joy out of it. I love hearing people, and this is kind of like what I was saying earlier, like learning why something is interesting to one person or another. Like, what is it about, acting and also writing and games? What is it about those things that you think gives you joy? Like, I don't know if you've seen Soul, but what's that spark?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna fire the same question back at you afterwards, but for me,
sure.
I mean, acting is if I'm not writing it, if I'm not creating it or whatever, there is, I guess I haven't had the chance yet to like fully like act out something I really like, a long form thing I created, but usually you're doing it for other people, right? And so it's this very enriching collaborative process of like I'm working with you to figure out who this character is and delivering the best performance I can. But I think, bottom line, what is the most enjoyable thing about acting for me is when you lose yourself in the character, where it becomes this thing of I'm not even really thinking about like, do I sound good or like in terms of technical quality, or it's just I am so in the moment that I'm so a lot of times with voiceover you don't get any visuals, right? You don't get any like anything to work with besides what's the page and the direction. But if I find myself like I am in that scene, like I can see what's going on, because I am not thinking of, okay, I am someone, the actor, how do I do this in a way that is to get the job, do the job well. It's no, I am the it sounds so cheesy, but I am the character. I am the character right now, and I am just, I think a lot of your best acting can come from what is just your instinct as this character, as opposed to what do you think sounds like it's the best, read, that instead of trying, I mean, obviously then you get, direction and, you can like get led to, even better reads, but I think approaching it with that sort of, I don't know, that to me is the most fun, where I'm just in it. Like that's the number one. And I love that. I'd say if I could achieve some level of that in the session, that's a win for me. And then on like the second level, it's just fucking fun to work with the director, and when you like nail a take and when you go, oh, that's the voice or that's the read, it just feels good. Like, yeah, we're working together. We're making the shit happen. Like, that's really gratifying and fun. But I mean, I think you can have that in other professions. So for me, it is really I'm primarily in voice acting, but it also happened when I did Anime Crimes Division, like, with live action. Like, there were, it's a comedy, right? But there were scenes like where I was so in the moment that, and I think it works because we played it so seriously or whatever. But like I was really in it in some parts, like you just all the self-consciousness of yourself just sort of falls away, and you don't. It's not that you don't care, but you're like swept up. When you're swept up in it, that's what I was like. I love this.
I've always kind of felt like the way I've like I feel like to kind of visualize it is, as actors, we all put on a mask, right? Like you imagine this wall of all the characters you've played, and you have a mask for each character. And sometimes you're always putting on that mask when you're performing, but there's moments in that performance in a scene where like everything's just firing off right. And suddenly that mask starts to grow and cover your whole body. And suddenly it becomes like a full suit of armor that you're wearing. And like you are fully coded in who this person is. And like sometimes the armor spreads and that booth becomes like a battlefield or whatever it is you are. But like it starts with this mask that you put on that then just slowly envelops you and everything that's around you.
That is a phenomenal description for it. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Like, and I think maybe I've said this before. I don't know if on this podcast, maybe in other videos, but when I knew I wanted to do this, it was because, so I think a lot of people, they look at voice acting and go, it just seems so cool because you get to be in like, I don't know, like a lot of cool video or anime or whatever. Like I want to be, and okay, to be fair, it is pretty cool, but I think they view it, or you get to do like funny, cool, voices, and it's so, and when I was younger, I thought voice acting was a cool profession, but it wasn't something I necessarily was like, I want to do that myself. But the first time I was like, I really want to do that was for a friend in high school. He wrote a radio play. He wrote a bunch of radio plays and he would cast us in them.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
I was voicing a character, the lead character in this radio play, and I very distinctly remember this. Like, I'm recording on my shitty mic in my room, and the character was a Russian boxer, and
hell yeah,
I was before I was just like more focused like, oh, like, how should he sound, like blah blah blah, like. But then as I got really into it, I was like not even thinking about that. And I was just, being that character. And when that happened, it's like a high. It's like you go out of it and you're like,
yeah,
oh, fuck. Oh, that was, and, not like the performance was like, even particularly technically good if I look back on it. Like, but at the time, it didn't matter if it was like, or like
you were connecting with
perfect or up to the level of where like I just enjoyed it. I just loved that that so much. And then I was like, oh, this is something I want to do, like if I can. I don't know if I can. Like it seems then it was kind of like with writing. It's like back before you became a professional writer, you're like, I would love to do that. How the fuck am I going to do that? Right. But for me then it did become sort of my weird life's mission of like, okay, everything I do now, I'm gonna. I had actually a very good conversation with a friend recently where it was like, there's a lot of luck involved, right, in getting into your sort of dream job. There's of course a amount of luck, but you can do a lot of things to make the odds more in your favor. And I think for me and for him, and I think for a lot of people, it's like we worked very hard to stack it in our favor so that even if we didn't get it, it was not for lack of us trying, right?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that said it, but they described luck as where hard work meets opportunity.
Exactly, yeah. And so it's exactly that. It's like if I worked as hard as I did, and then it just didn't happen, it's like, I tried. I have no regrets because I tried my hardest. Because, there's no guarantee you'll ever succeed in getting that thing, right? I think for a lot of people, when it's like, do you want to be this? Like, you really want to be this? Okay. You have to be prepared to put almost everything you have into it, and even then you still might not get it. Like as long as you are prepared for that and aware of that, break a leg. Like, honestly, like, that's what all of us are doing and kind of still doing, right? Is just putting everything
it's a complex
putting everything
journey
we have into it in the hopes that it's something we can keep on doing. And if you are not disciplined enough or not committed enough to that, where you could put all that work into it and still never get it, you should do something else that would be more beneficial, like, or pursue it on a different level and not as your career, which might be smarter. It might be smarter to just do it more for fun, but
or even don't pursue it as your career. Like, get something that allows you to, live safely and comfortably. And then, if you really are passionate about something, you set aside that time. And that's, I don't want to trivialize how difficult that can be, setting aside time for something like that. Cause it's not,
yes.
it is focus and hard work. And God, it feels like more and more every day time is the most precious resource that it feels like we never have enough of. But, yeah, I mean, I have a good handful of friends who work just regular desk jobs. Some of them are fine with it. Some of them hate it. But they're just like, yeah, like, that's the job. Like, it's called a job. It's called work for a reason. And not everybody gets like the dream job. And sometimes your dream job can ruin what it is you love, because then it becomes job. But like, there are things that they all enjoy and have passions that they pursue on the side. And that is okay.
Going back to, and I want to hear from you with writing. I mean, because, well, I guess because you do a lot of different things. Do you first, like, when people ask me, what do you do? I consider myself an actor first and foremost. Yeah, I do YouTube. Yeah, I do other things. But that's sort of my main identity in terms of what I am most passionate about. And yeah, if I ask you, do you consider yourself a writer foremost?
I'd consider myself a writer. I like to consider myself a writer director, but I'm at a point where I have not directed in a hot second. And so I kind of just like default to writer. And also just like, truth be told, something about introducing yourself as a writer director just sounds like so pretentious.
So my question then is, what do you, back to you, what do you love about it? What makes you,
So I think it's funny. I'm very fortunate to do voice acting. I began voice acting as a means to an end. And this is also how I got into writing. I did comics. I drew comics for years, starting back when I was in middle school. I did little comic books about me and my friends, and then that evolved into comic strips that were published in the school newspapers, and then ultimately in the paper when I went to the University of Texas. I had a few different strips. I realize now, looking back, that I did that to tell stories and tell jokes. I used to draw and ink and do all the text and everything. And like, I remember always being so impatient when I knew the plot or story to either my strip or like little short story. And then I had to draw it. Like, I got a lot of joy. I loved drawing eyes. Like, I loved facial expressions, but there would be a time where, through that inking process, I'd be like, I just want this to be done.
Right.
And that was kind of like later my first clue that's like, I don't think I want to be an artist or an illustrator, or like I took animation courses and realized like, I do not have the patience for this. I love this medium, but I am not built in a way in which I can do this and not go crazy. Period. There's wonderful people out there that have that skill set. I realized everything I was doing was in service of telling stories. And I think the reason I love writing and I love directing, and this is actually something I've kind of unpacked semi-recently, is because I am fascinated by the transfer of ideas and emotion. This is extremely important, I think, in storytelling. And obviously entertaining comes into that. That's where I think emotion comes into play. Like, I used to do a comedy school news program in high school. And like once every few months, our school system was weird, but we had like this home room that you would go to every couple months where you would get your report cards and stuff. And during that class, it was like 30 minutes and there was like nothing to do. It was very bizarre, but I essentially worked out with a principal where during that period, I could air my friends and I's like 15-minute comedy news program about here's what's going on around the school. And, there was something so satisfying about sitting in a classroom and seeing people laugh, and seeing a joke land, and like, oh yeah, they went on this like comedy journey and we all ended up in the same place and enjoyed it. And that was very satisfying. And then on our last episode, we kind of did this intentionally cheesy goodbye montage set to that song Clocks, where we did a bunch of crossfades and like waving goodbye and shit. And the strangest thing happened. I'm sat in that class and I hear a sniffle and I look over and there's this girl with like teary eyes that's like a senior, like we're all, graduating in a few months. And I remember thinking, whoa, it's kind of like that moment in Monsters Inc. where they find out that laughter hits harder than screams. It was kind of like that, where I was like, oh my God. Like at that point in my life, I was like, yeah, sure, I'm a class clown, whatever. But at that point I was like, oh, I like have the capability to have a different sort of emotional impact on someone. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And as I got more into writing, I've even realized this, like major plot points and themes in the shows that I've worked on, from the Chorus trilogy of Red versus Blue to Ruby, like the concept of communication as both an asset and a hindrance to characters is a recurring theme. And I never did this intentionally. But I think there is something about like, there's something magical to me about ideas that myself and a team of writers can have and put into a body of work, and people on the other side of the world can consume that and be taken somewhere with those ideas. And either maybe they disagree with them, or maybe it speaks to them on a level that they can connect to, and it can help them look inwards into something that they've experienced. Or maybe it's just a simple joke that it just brings some levity into their world. Sure. But there's something about that I think is just, it's just fucking sorcery, man. And I love the power that stories have to affect people and inspire people, or just get them through a long day. And then related to that, what I really enjoy about directing is that collaborative process. Like you were speaking earlier about how you love working with the director to find the character, to find that voice. And there's something very cool in directing. Because God, I was so scared as a director when I first started. And it is still like, even now, if I was going to direct a short, I have that like nervous excitement before talking with a team. But I was never comfortable viewing the director as like the captain of a ship or whatever, even though I guess whatever. But like, to me, a director's position is more of an assistant. And by that, I mean, as a director, it is my job to try and guide you and push your work, whether you be an artist, an actor, an animator, a compositor, but to try and communicate an idea that I have to you in a way to where you're not having to do as much guesswork. Like there's a million ways something can explode, but I'm talking like, no, I want the one where you see like you're seeing trails of smoke connected to pieces of rubble that have been flung miles away, and a big mushroom cloud, like helping to convey that idea. And then this artist is able to do their best work in service of that vision. In service of that vision. That to me, that collaborative process, and then also hearing back from them. Like I can describe something like, I want something animated this way. I want this punch to feel like this. And I'm working, like I direct with sound effects and pantomime a lot back when we could do that in person.
Sure.
And then that was just like how I did it. But then listening to someone who's like, their craft, their art is, in this case, let's call it animation. They can suggest a movement or a style, and I don't know the technicality behind it. I don't know why this punch feels snappier than this punch, but they know. And they can start throwing around ideas of like, oh, if this is the vibe you're going for, what about a move like this? What about like, it looks like it's going to be a right hook, but it's actually a dirty elbow jab. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. That's perfect. It becomes this game of like exciting, imaginative tennis of now we're in this cool cycle of like, oh, what about this? What about this? We're building on that. And you end up with something so much greater because so many hands got on that ball and they were able to take their years of craftsmanship and expertise and put their mark on it. And now you're looking at something that no one person could ever have made. But through that transfer of ideas from person to person to person, we all ended up with something. And god damn, if that's not just the coolest shit. It's sorcery. It just feels like sorcery.
Yeah, no, and like, again, it sounds, or not again, but it's basically your approach is what I think a lot of directors should do, because I think some directors are like, I'm the auteur and I have complete control, and you're all puppets that have to just do what I want. But no, I think the most valuable and most, like you said, the best it's collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Like bringing the strengths together and going, yeah, okay, well, how about this? And yeah, and building up that tower of, making it. Everybody just wants to make it the best thing it can be. Yeah, I think that's a great. And I like your analogy of tennis. That's perfect.
Maybe it's less like tennis where one person's trying to win, and it's more like that game where you're trying to keep the balloon from hitting the ground. Everybody's got to get on this thing to keep it in the air.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot let that fucking balloon touch.
Don't let
the
it hit the ground.
Yeah. That's very good. Shit, I think we're about at the end of this. Like, this has been great. Like,
dude, I've had such a good time. This has gone by in a blink. Holy cow, man.
We'll just have to first off, just talk more in general,
Yeah.
Things are just crazy right now.
Yeah.
But also should have you back on sometime. Like, this was just a lot of fun, and I think what's great is, I think your creative spark, like, or I wouldn't say this is your singular spark, but you seeing that girl, tear up, that was me. That was my Russian boxer moment of like, oh, like, yeah, what this is supposed to be a comedy, because the thing I was doing was a comedy, but I was like, but I'm feeling more than, I'm feeling like something like that, is that creative sort of spark. Yeah, and I think hopefully for people listening to this, for especially those, because a lot of people are creatively struggling out there. Hopefully this gave you some sort of, insight or something into the shit. Basically, just go create shit. That's basically all I'm always telling
Go create something, or go read something and do something you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
Just like, it's a hard time for everybody in so many different ways. And what's so strange about this is everyone is being affected by the same thing, but everyone's story and situation is different, and we are all having to go through it with, different cards in our hand and different hopes that we're hoping to have on the other side of all of this. And so
right.
I think we've done a lot of like, I guess inspirational, like, go out, follow your dream kind of talk, but also like, don't feel like you have to be doing things is the other thing. Like, we touched on it a bit, but like, caring for yourself and just making sure that you are doing okay is sometimes something that a lot of people can take for granted. And for other people, it is a battle that takes place every waking moment of every day. Yeah. And so first and foremost, just take care of yourself and know that you are enough, and you can do it. Even if it is just taking a shower today, you can do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
This was a good time,
especially during these times. But yeah,
this I didn't realize. I think I needed this. Just get to hang out and chat with you, man. Good lord.
Yeah, I that's great. Like, there have been some conversations on this where both of us end and go, fuck. And sometimes it's somebody I've met for the first time, and sometimes it's someone who we've been buds for a while, but it's just like, it's just what a good talk. Yeah. Now, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter, where I post goofs and stuff. It's the most pretentious name ever. It's at the Miles Luna.
You're the
Oh my God. I every day someone asks me for my Twitter handle and I have to say that, I die inside. My friend Chelsea loves to remind me how pretentious that is, and she's right.
Was there a Miles Luna already taken though?
There was, and I hate him for it.
That's okay.
I wish I could have gone with that Miles Luna. Anyways, that doesn't matter. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Miles Luna. I think same thing on Twitch and Instagram. Although I'm not a regular Twitch streamer. People that do that are amazing. I don't have the energy to do it. But sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm writing a D&D campaign. You can come hang out. Also, I don't know when this goes up, but as of today, Wednesday, the 3rd of February, I think I think I'm gonna make a cameo because I got a bunch of responses to do one, so I'll probably do that. I don't know. Look for me there. I don't know what it's gonna be called, but I'll probably do that and fucking LinkedIn, I guess. I don't know.
Can't go get a cameo from Miles. Like that's available now. So are you the Miles Luna on Cameo?
I don't know. I haven't actually made it yet. I'll tweet about it. If you follow me on Twitter, that's where I post stuff. Cool. And so yeah, I don't know. There's that. I'm in between jobs and just learning right now, so I'm not in a bunch of places, but those are some places you could probably find me.
Cool.